Welcome to tonight's show. My name is Alexa. I'm your head of online community here at Housecall Pro and your host for the Home Service Evening Update. I'm joined by my co-hosts Roland and Mel. Roland is the co-founder of Housecall Pro and Mel is our awesome Senior Vice President of People. We come at you live now for 10 weeks, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, to share the state of the world according to the home service industry. And then we have one topic or one special guest on. So we are really excited to welcome Brian Scudamore, founder and CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Brian founded 1-800-GOT-JUNK when he was just 19, so he's here to tell us his whole story and evolution, really about the importance of being willing to fail and how that got him to where he is today. I also think the name of your the parent company, OTE Brands, is super cool. I read that the O means ordinary, and it says to, and then E, to extraordinary services. So I'd love to know a little bit more about that later.
Of course.
We are also giving away 20 copies of Brian's book, WTF, Willing to Fail. And Roland and I will let you know how you can win this towards the end of this webinar. Let's go ahead and get into the news with Mel, and we will get right into our interview with Brian.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Thanks everyone for joining us. Lots of familiar faces and a couple of names I don't recognize, so welcome. I'm Melina Fairley, Senior Vice President of People at Housecall Pro. Please do feel free to call me Mel. And we have been coming to you live Monday through Thursday. And I start just by giving you a quick daily update of what's going on in the news related to coronavirus. And then we get on to providing you with great information and guests that will help you become better in your businesses. So here's your evening update for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. The Johns Hopkins dashboard is reporting almost 5 million global cases with over 325,000 deaths as of this point. The green number is the one where we are really enjoying tracking. That's getting close to 2 million recovered globally. And in the US, we are at over 1.5 million confirmed cases, and we are coming awfully close at over 93,000. We're coming awfully close to 100,000 deaths here in the US, with almost 300,000 recovered. So continuing to get more and more recoveries every day, and that rate is definitely slowing with deaths in the US. Some news out of New York State, 16 hospitals are going to begin to allow visitors in a 2-week pilot program that requires visitors to wear protective gear and have their temperature taken. So that's certainly welcome news for those with loved ones in the hospital. I know many of us have seen stories about people suffering alone or giving birth alone, things that normally your family would be there for. Also in New York, Memorial Day events of up to 10 people will be allowed. So Governor Cuomo, though, is warning residents not to be overly complacent. He said, quote, if people get arrogant, people get cocky, or people get casual, or people become undisciplined, you will see that infection rate go up. And as we know, New York was hit particularly hard with slightly less than 1/3 of the US total of deaths to date. Cruise lines were an early indicator of how dangerous this virus was, and they continue to struggle. We heard from Royal Caribbean today. They announced their quarterly earnings, and the company lost $1.4 billion in January through March, and certainly those losses continue.
Yeah, obviously their stocks definitely dropped 60 to 75% across cruise lines, Royal Caribbean, Carnival. And if you start to look at it, Expedia just released their earnings, even though there was like a 74% loss in Q1, their stock is up. So it wasn't as bad as people had actually expected it. So maybe we'll see some recovery there as things start to open up some more.
Yeah, the cruise lines are saying that people are still booking cruises within historical ranges for next year. So those that love cruises are willing to give them a shot.
I think there's a lot of pent up demand there. I think people are like, get me out of my home.
Yes, agree. There is some really interesting and hopeful news out of Korea. So you may have heard that there was a study of patients who had tested positive after recovering. So this was really perplexing. So they had coronavirus, they recovered, and then they tested positive again. So they actually found that those patients in the study, when they went back and looked at those 285, they were actually found to be incapable of transmitting coronavirus and could have the antibodies that prevent them from getting it again. So that second positive that they got was positive enough to turn the test, but not positive enough that they were then infecting other people. So this would be really good news for us to get back to normal. If you've had it and this study holds over time, if you've had it, recover, doesn't seem like you're going to be passing it again, but we'll stay tuned. It's super preliminary at this point, but hopeful. College classes. I don't know about you, but I know a couple of graduating seniors who are really worried about what's going to happen with college. So some U.S. colleges are making creative plans to reopen for in-person classes in the fall. So Notre Dame is going to start early in August, end early at Thanksgiving. People don't have to travel home for Thanksgiving, then back to school for finals, then back home for Christmas. New York University, NYU, is offering a go local option, which will allow students to attend whatever campus is closest to where they live. So that's certainly creative. And the University of Kentucky is considering just having the newer kids, the freshmen, the sophomores come to campus, the seniors and the juniors stay home and do online learning to limit number of people on campus. So if you have a student that's feeling devastated by not being able to start college or go back to college in the fall, don't give up hope yet. There are still some decisions being made, and they definitely seem to be getting creative. So that's your news for today. Alexa?
Thank you, Mel. I definitely feel for those college seniors. I have two twin siblings. One is graduating from University of Las Vegas and one is graduating from Berkeley, and they just both took their pictures on campus and they're super sad they're not going to be able to walk. So I wonder too if there's going to be like commencements that are happening later this year. It's still also up in the air, but it's something that I totally took for granted, being able to go to class. Who would have thunk? But it's good to hear that there is some hope. So thank you, Mel. I get all my news from you. I don't watch the TV anymore.
Good here.
All right. So welcome, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, joining us in our pros. We are so excited to have you here. Roland and I have a lot of questions for you. Hopefully nothing too crazy, but we'd love it if you could just start us off with the story of what 800 Got Junk. Did you always dream of building a junk removal empire?
I did not, but let me start by giving you guys a shout out. I've never seen anything like this. You guys are pro newscasters. This is unbelievable. I mean, who would have thought pre-COVID that this is what you'd be doing every night? Maybe you did. I don't know, but this is unbelievable. No. You do a great job, and I'm like, wasn't I tuning in every night? This is great.
Wow, thanks, Brian.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. So Alexa, the question of, what was the story of 1-800-GOT-JUNK? A pretty basic serendipitous moment. I was in a McDonald's drive-thru of all places. There was this beat up old pickup truck in front of me with plywood sides built up on the box. I was 18 years old looking for a way to pay for college. I was one course short of graduation from high school. All of my buddies were going to college and I had that fear of missing out. So with my FOMO, I said, what am I going to do? And I went and bought this pickup truck. I was in McDonald's. I was like, I need one of those. This truck, it said Mark's Hauling on the side, filled with junk. I'm going to go start hauling junk. And I bought a truck for $700 and spent about $1,300 on repairs in a couple of weeks. But the business more than paid for itself in less than a month. And off I went hauling junk from people when they had old furniture, appliances, yard debris, and so on. So ironically, what funded my college education also inspired me to drop out. I was 3 years into my degree, and I sat down with my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I got some good news for you. And he sat down and I said, I'm dropping out of college. And he said, how is that good news? Here's a guy who's a liver transplant surgeon who's done more schooling than anyone I've ever met. And his son's saying he's quitting school. I said, school, I'm learning much more about business by running one more than studying in school. My business is working and this is my passion. And off I went to build a business that ultimately grew to a $450 million business across 3 countries.
Yeah, I feel like there's different ways that people learn. During college, I ran a painting company and did through College Works, which is also kind of like, you get started through there and then ultimately just decided to do it myself once I kind of learned the ropes. But it feels like that's definitely a common path, but not always an easy discussion. But it sounds like it didn't go too bad for you.
Well, it didn't go too bad in terms of the outcome, but it was about 10 years before my dad actually said to me, Bri, good decision. I mean, he just for years thought I was crazy. And he really just thought, here's my son, the junk man. And I think he was kind of embarrassed for a while, but certainly as things started to grow and we started to franchise, he felt proud and, one day came to terms with it. It's interesting, Roland, we also have a painting company. You mentioned you were part of College Works. We have a company called Wow One Day Painting, where we paint people's homes in a day. And it's all part of the O2E Brands umbrella, which I know, Alexa, you asked about. It stands for ordinary to exceptional. We take ordinary businesses like junk removal, painting. or window washing with our other brand, Shack Shine, and we make them exceptional through amazing entrepreneurs that want to build great brands with us.
The
feel like there's a
branding is just so on point. Like, it's so simple, but it makes so much sense. I think it's genius. Obviously, it works for you.
Well, you know what? It is worked. I mean, when we started with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, it was the name, was the phone number, was the web address, and it just all made sense. And people would see our trucks drive by. And in the early days, my company was 738-JUNK. And I had the 738-JUNK spray painted on the side of the truck so people could call whenever they saw me park my big mobile billboard anywhere. And then as we started to grow across Canada and the US, I said, we can't have all these local numbers in different cities. We had 278-JUNK and 986-JUNK. And so I said, okay, scrap that. Let's do 1-800-GOT-JUNK. It was a play on the Got Milk campaign, the Dairy Foundation years ago. And it's worked for us, and people can't forget the phone number, and it's pretty fun.
I think also back then with web addresses too, you're thinking about what was previous to that. You want to get that phone number that's super memorable because that was your address. So that was a great move.
Yeah, it was a great move. It was also a lucky move. Sorry, I cut you off there, Alexa, but it's a fun story. When I got the phone number, we came up with this idea of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and I reached out to find the phone number and couldn't find out who owned it. It was only working in one state, which I didn't know anyone in this state. I knew everyone in New York and California, but when I reached out to Idaho where it was working, it was the Department of Transportation in Idaho that owned it. So I'm going, oh no, the government owns this phone number. They're not going to give this up. I made literally 60 phone calls. And on the 60th phone call, I had it all documented and written down. I asked for the phone room, and I got through to Michael in the phone room. Government has to have a phone room and someone that runs it. And I said, I need this phone number. And he didn't even ask why. And he said, you've called me 3 times over the last couple of days. It must be more important to you than it is to us. And didn't sell it to me, just gave it to me. And 2 days later, I called Michael just to say, okay, the AT&T form's all cleared. It's mine. Thank you. I owe you. Can I send you, dinner or something for your team? And he was no longer with the company. So no idea what happened to Michael, but maybe he's listening today, and a big thank you. But we got the phone number, 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Such a cool story. I feel like those early founder stories too, there's always some real cool things that you'll never forget there. And maybe there is a serendipitous moment that'll happen because you never know who's watching these things. That might be funny if someone called Michael finally reaches out one day and goes, hey, remember me?
That was me.
Yeah.
You
Get
owe
Michael a Big Mac. Somebody find Michael.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome.
So one thing that I feel like throughout your journey that is something you talk often a lot about, which is a really cool acronym as well, which is WTF. And it isn't what you think it is. But I'd like for you to kind of explain it to our pros, because I feel like inherently they're doing this and learning from it, but they might not even be doing it consciously. But you've really been very deliberate about this, and really as a big part of success of the things that you've built. So maybe if you can start just breaking it down for the pros, what do you codify the acronym to be? And really, where do you think our pros can see opportunity and what it means?
Absolutely. So I wrote a book. Let me start with, the book is called WTF. So I'll tell you how WTF came about. Wrote a book, and Roy Williams, he's affectionately known as the Wizard of Ads. He does all our radio creative. He's a great partner and friend of the business. And Roy kept trying to talk me into writing a book. And I said, Roy, this is 8 years in a row. You keep saying every time I come to Austin, let's write a book. I'm not interested in writing a book. My ego doesn't need it. I'm not a great reader, let alone taking the time to write. And he said, just let's write a book. You got 30 years of stories to tell. Let's tell them. So he interviewed me. We put it all together in a book. And what was cool is I kept saying, Roy, I'm a branding guy. As Alexa, realizes, I love creating brands and names. I said, what's the name of the book? And he kept saying, Brian, I've written tons of books. You don't do it this way. The title jumps out after the manuscript's all put together. I said, that just seems wrong. So I trusted him as the expert, as the co-writer. And at the end of the book, we closed the book. And I was like, man, this is a lot of failing I've done. And so it jumped out like he said it would. WTF, willing to fail. And so when you have a WTF moment, some sort of failure, you look at yourself or your business and you're like, what am I doing? What is going on? But to me, if I look at my 30-year journey of ups and downs, every failure's gotten me to a better place, a bigger place. And I've learned something. So an example of a failure, this is in the book, but one of my favorites, it hurt a lot at the time, was 5 years into the business. I was $500,000 in revenue. We had 5 trucks, and I enjoyed what I was doing in terms of building a business, but I didn't enjoy who I was working with. I didn't have the clean cut, happy, positive, optimistic professionals that I wanted to help me build my little company. And so I one day just decided the only way out, I had 11 employees, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. So I said, I think I've got 9 of them. Let me get rid of all 11. I brought everyone together in a room and I started with 2 words. I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry as your leader that I might not have found the right people, trained you right, given you the love and support you've needed to be successful. And I fired the entire company. A massive failure, going from 5 trucks, which maybe your pros who might have a few vehicles could relate to. You can't run them all alone. If you lost all your employees, what do? The business has to be rebuilt. And I learned the valuable lesson that your company is all about people, finding the right people and treating them right. So I looked at my business and I said, how do I rebuild? How do I find people I want to work with I could treat like friends, that they would have the same excitement for what I was building, the way I was building. Mm-hmm. And I rebuilt my company. But that failure taught me something very powerful that made us who we are today.
So speaking of failure, just a little bit, you talk a little bit about how you really need to make failure your friend. You know, you really got to like run towards it and not away from it. What kind of advice do you give people where obviously there's a big financial detriment sometimes to failure, and
Sure.
Some of them are recoverable, some are a little bit harder, but how do you overcome that? Because you went from 5 back to nothing. So I can only imagine your revenue did very similarly. Like, how were you able to do that? And obviously with COVID, I feel like a lot of pros have gone through that moment where they're like, hey guys, like we don't have any work. We got to go from where we're at back to just me, or me and my tech. So how do you kind of empower and overcome that angst?
Yeah. So the first thing I do when a failure happens, and it took me years to learn this, but failure is your friend if you allow it. Failure is a gift. People have been saying lately, don't waste a great crisis. Now, again, with all due respect that there's tragedy in this, and Mel shared some scary numbers. Yeah. Putting tragedy aside, the business side, if we can stay healthy, we look at our business and we say, you know what, there are ways to make lemonade out of lemons. You can look at a tough situation and say, there's learning here. Something's going to make me better. So what we've done as an example is we've talked to our franchise partners and said, a WTF mentality is taking out a sheet of paper when you feel you have the mental capacity to do this. We were all scrambling during the very beginning of COVID going, the sky's falling. This is a bad sci-fi movie. Take out a sheet of paper and write down what is at least one thing that is good, that or even better than where we are now, that can come from this seemingly tough time. And so it's that lens of, if you start writing out positive things and think of opportunities, you'll be surprised at how many of them might actually happen. They talk about the new normal. We were talking today about getting back to our offices. We have an office in Vancouver, an office in Toronto, about 550 head office staff. We don't know if we're going to be back anytime soon. We're not allowed to in Toronto. While they've said it's okay in Vancouver, there's a whole bunch of rules and requirements. So we've said, do we even want to go back? Yeah, our call center, our agents are working from home, most of them, and we're having success with that. But I said, there's some things that we used to do, like huddle. We had a daily stand-up meeting for 7 minutes every single day in person for about 20 years. You can't have those gatherings today, at least not while COVID's around. I said to some people on a Zoom call today on my team, I said, I prefer the new huddle. We are doing huddle today through Zoom, and you'll have 300 people. And I said, what's interesting, in person, this sort of contrasts why I think huddle is better today over Zoom. In person, you would see people's backs because everyone's facing the stage. Whoever's running huddle that day, all you're seeing is backs. With Zoom, all you're seeing is faces. And it's a big difference to see someone smile or their reaction, good or bad, to what's going on. It's very different than that feeling of just looking in person at someone's back. Yes, there's some energy and clapping and cheering, but we get that online because you can see people do the claps. You can see people, introverts who don't feel comfortable speaking up at huddle and sharing good news or missing systems and opportunities. They are typing this into the chat, and like your chat, these things light up. So I prefer, even when we go back to the office, we have to have people who want to be at their desks and do huddle. We have to have people from home zooming in to do huddle. There's a lot of things that will become better out of these so-called failures or tough times. It's how you look at the world and stay optimistic.
So I personally also really love the Zoom huddle. We used to do it every single morning, and we kind of stand around in the circle and say this almost not the same thing, but for some reason now we've like kind of put our own twist on what we talk about in stand-up. What have you done with your teams to keep the company culture alive and thriving when you guys aren't able to interact face-to-face like you used to?
Yeah, so it is what it is, and we do our best. And so these are the little things that I'm sure aren't totally unique to the world and others are doing, but we try and connect as much as we can through Zoom. My president who runs the company, Eric Church, and we connect every morning through phone. We actually like to give each other a break from Zoom, but we'll start by doing a half an hour Peloton together, and then we'll get some exercise, and then we do a half an hour of talk, sort of walk and talk and chat through opportunities and challenges and what's going on for the day or the week ahead. With our team, we have an 8 a.m. call. Our leadership team does its own huddle where we get on and we talk about our top three. What's our focus our top one of three? What's our focus for the day to say, here is the challenge, here's the mission that we're chasing, and can we make it happen? We do something called First Round Friday. So in person, every Friday you'd get together and a different department would host First Round, and you'd buy, everyone in the company a drink, a beer, a soda, it doesn't matter, and you sit around and chat. Well, we're actually doing it, and we're getting great participation. You'll see people on their deck in their front yard or in their living room having a drink and toasting. And we do silly things like, as Alexa commented in the beginning, I used to have a full head of hair and I look different. My 8-year-old son said, you need a haircut. And my wife said, you need a haircut. My 8-year-old son said, I'll do it. So we decided to do a fundraiser for the food bank and a little thing where we got on one of these First Round Fridays. My 8-year-old and my 15-year-old are cutting my hair and gave me a mohawk. And it was just, a good laugh and raise a little bit of money and don't take ourselves too seriously. And a couple of days later, the mohawk got old and I felt like I was trying to be someone I'm not, so I shaved it off. But we have fun. Last thing I'll say too about what you can do differently, which is interesting, is over Zoom, we did as a bit of a joke, but it became a real thing, was, hey, we should have bring your kids to work day. Now, everybody working from home, the kids are already there. But we did it on Zoom and we had hundreds of people plus their kids and their fur babies and everything show up. And it was just like, it made you want to actually shed a few tears, because you're like, when you build a company, this isn't just about the head office, but look at the families that we're supporting and helping and working together. And it was a pretty neat moment.
Wow. I feel like everyone here can do that, whether it's just you and one other tech, or you have like 5-10 trucks on the road. How special would that be to get together, maybe after working hours? Maybe you give your guys a half of the day off and you do a big Zoom call. Zoom is free to have meetings on, up for 40 minutes. So there's still a time cap you can leave on if you don't want to spend all night together, but
sure,
bringing the families into it, bringing the fur babies into it, what a special thing for your company culture after this, when you're hiring again and they're like, what did you do for your guys during COVID? That is an example of something spectacular to do.
Yeah. And it's making the best of the opportunities you've got. And so our franchise partners, if I take Wow One Day or Shine as an example, two of the younger brands, 50-ish franchise partners will get together every single week. And I'll be on those calls because it's such a great idea, sort of storming. But you'll have franchise partners talk about where they're facing challenges due to COVID, how slow the interior side of the business is for Wow One Day painting. How do we do exterior? How do we do virtual estimates? But more importantly, they're talking about how do we get ready for the road to recovery? How do we build up our skill set now as business leaders? How do we build up our PP and finances? Everything that we can do right now, and they're supporting each other. So what I love about a franchise organization, as my model, is that nobody's by themselves. Everybody is in the same business, but non-competing, and they can reach out to any franchise partner across the US, Canada, Australia, and say, I need some help. What are you doing? And that's where Zoom has been incredible.
Yeah, I feel like we've definitely noticed something similar too, because we used to do regional local meetups. So in every city, there was a pro leader, and then everyone would just come drink beer, and we would sponsor that. And then now, obviously, can't do that. So then we switched to having industry-specific meetups. So we have an HVAC meetup So all HVAC owners from all across the United States all come and do the exact same thing that you just mentioned. So if you're watching this and you're not a part of those yet, there's so much value in just ideas. And obviously, people that are trying things are failing often too and learning. And sometimes you can learn from their failures. Doesn't mean you don't try what they did, because maybe it works in a different region. But it's a really good place. What you mentioned, and I love just when you say brainstorming, because I'm very ADD as well, is like all these constant barrage of ideas is super helpful, especially during these times. Because I feel like now more than ever, you should be trying way more than you were before. And you kind of casually dropped in like virtual estimates. You know, there's so many things that I think have changed in this environment that probably will never go back. I think, and you're probably seeing similar to across the franchises, the amount of time savings that you get by being able to do virtual estimates and not having to get the truck on the road and then physically go to every single location to be able to get a bid. You know, now you can do 20 as opposed to maybe 5 in a day. So there's really cool things that are coming from all this. Do you have any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Roland, that the adoption of technology now, where you had seniors that were at home that couldn't, you know, they had to depend on technology to get groceries. Now, while they didn't figure out how to use that iPad or whatever they might be doing, they had to, and their children would help them figure it out. And people are using technology at all ages now versus it just being a generational thing. And I think the forcing of technology, it's interesting to see how quickly through COVID, our online booking engine for any of our brands just climbs and climbs. And people are choosing to, why get on the phone and call into our call center, as friendly as those people are, if I don't have to, because a online booking, something through digital can be a lot faster.
Yeah, we see the same thing in online booking. We offer a similar tool for our pros to be able to use it in our software. And we've always seen that just increasing, but it's just hyper accelerated right now.
Hyper accelerated. Yeah.
It's just amazing to see it. And these are things that won't be unlearned. So it's not as if people are going to not do it now. Now the cat's out of the bag. Same thing happened with the airline industry. It used to be you call your travel agent, you don't know what happens. All you know is you pay some money and then you get a ticket and you go. Once Southwest, and I mean, there's lots of people, once you can do it online, you're not going to go back to calling a travel agent. You're just not. And it's cat's out of the bag, and it's fast forwarded now.
Totally agree, 100%.
So I wanted to ask you, and a lot of you, so for those of you watching, Brian does a lot of TED Talks, on a lot of podcasts. You should listen to them if you get a chance. But something that sticks out to me is when you joined YEO, the Young Entrepreneur Organization. Can you talk about the importance of peer support, but how to take that peer support and not compare yourself to others? I feel like a lot of our pros, we create these environments and communities for all of them to collaborate and work together, but sometimes it's really, really hard not to compare to what you don't have and what someone else has.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, so you mentioned the comparing yourself to others, a dangerous thing. I don't recommend it. When I hit $1 million in revenue, which was 8 years, so it's crazy. It took us 8 years to get to that point. It was pretty slow. And I was figuring out all the systems. We do $1 million on a given day, even during COVID when things are slower. And so it shows you that's how long it took to get there. Now, when I started building the business, I said, okay, $1 million was important because I could join the Young Entrepreneur Organization. They've got about 10,000 members now across the globe. They're actually called EO. They got rid of the Y because people got older. So it's now just Entrepreneur Organization. They didn't want to discriminate. So when I joined that organization, that was a big milestone for me, because as a guy who's gone to 14 schools from kindergarten to college, literally, and not trying to be funny, I graduated only from kindergarten. I didn't graduate from high school. I didn't graduate from kindergarten, swear to God. And what's interesting about that is I love to learn. I just, like Roland being ADD, I don't sit in a classroom very well. I'm standing right now because I hate sitting. And so when I ended up joining that organization, that was my way to learn from others, from entrepreneurs who had a shared passion and similar interests. But what I did, and this was the mistake of comparing myself to others, I started looking at these other people and going, I have $1 million business, but you have a $10 million business or a $100 million business. You're not in junk removal, you're in tech, how sexy and whatever. And I started to go, this just isn't, junk removal isn't for me. And maybe I'm not even meant to be an entrepreneur. And I went through a bit of a doom loop and had some depression of, gee, this isn't, you know, I'm doing my best and I've been working this and all my friends have gone to school and all these other people have great businesses. But what it forced me to do, again, a willing to fail moment, was hold on, stop the doom. I'm an optimistic person. I went to my parents. They had a little summer cabin, and I went there and I pulled out a sheet of paper, one page, double-sided, and I started to write out what I call my painted picture. It was a vision for the future of what the future could look, feel, and act like at a point in the future. So I started literally just writing what I could see in my head, pure possibility. I said we'd be the top 30 cities in North America by the end of 2003. I said we'd be the FedEx of junk removal, clean, shiny trucks, friendly uniformed drivers. I said we'd be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Now, these were all things that hadn't happened, but I saw 5 years out that they could happen and would happen. And I built a team and said, I don't know how we're going to get there, but if you're on board, let's go do this. And we did. And we've had painted pictures for all our businesses, and it's been an amazing tool. I know in COVID, it's hard to think out even 90 days. But when you're in a point where you can see the future, you don't map out how to get there. You just create the vision for the future and what it looks like. There's examples of, I know you're giving out 20 books. Thank you. There's some examples of the painted picture in there. I'll also throw it out if I can help anyone and they want to see my process for creating a painted picture. If you go to Brian Scudamore on Instagram or LinkedIn, just send me a note saying, can I please see your painted picture process? And I'll send you off an article and a system.
Yeah, we had Jack Carr on last night, and he was very similar, just like write things down because it helps you visualize and then helps you commit to that. And I think even just the process of doing that helps solidify, even when you're writing. And obviously, I feel like failure's probably the best way to learn, but the other best way to learn is to teach and teach others, because it forces you to learn before you can even teach the others. And even just writing stuff down, if you think someone else is going to see it, you're like, oh, I don't know, I got to think this through a little bit before I put this on paper. Did I write it the right way? So it's a very, very good technique to use.
Yeah. And people often challenge me and they go, but what if you don't have to make mistakes? And I said, you find me one successful person in the world who's been uber successful at anything in life that hasn't failed. I mean, that's how people learn. You make a mistake, you tweak, you continue to iterate. And so the simple example I give, I'm up in Whistler right now in the mountains. Luckily, we just love it up here. And so I know when we were skiing, when we were allowed to do that, one of my younger kids kept falling and falling and falling. And she just came to me at the end of a lesson and just said, I hate skiing. I said, why? She said, because I fall all the time. And I'm like, you fall? Yeah, that's awesome. And I taught her about falling is how you learn to not fall and to get better and faster and so on. And at the end of one of the ski lessons the next day, she comes up, she goes, guess what? I fell today. Big smile. You have to fall. You have to fail. Otherwise, you don't appreciate the good stuff and you don't get the learning and grow. So in business, yes, Roland, you mentioned, financial challenges. There will be businesses and plenty of them that go bankrupt during COVID. There will be employees that lose jobs, but imagine the opportunities that get opened up. You're going to get someone that goes, wow, I got laid off, I got packaged out, but I went and bought a franchise. I ended up starting a business on my own. I was inspired to do something different and do something new. And it was a forced sort of push out and take a new path. So be willing to fail.
Yeah, I don't think there are any straight lines, and everyone that's successful that tells you it's a straight line is lying to you. Totally. Pulling the wool over your eyes or something funny, because it just never truly transpires quite that way. There's a lot of bumps and scrapes along that road to get there.
We did an exercise in EO on one of our retreats called the Lifeline, and you start your life in the beginning as a kid, and you write out sort of a timeline or a chart of how would you rate your life at any point in time? I was 10 years old and this is how I felt and why my life was a 10, and then it dropped and something happened in your life. And it was interesting that every entrepreneur in that room, there were a bunch of them, they weren't even like this. They were like sharp, jagged, like up, down, up, down, up, down. So in the same way, in the same way tides go in and out, in the same way that the sun rises and falls. I mean, there are rhythms in the world and things happen. And you know what? A lot of them suck while you're in them. But if you can understand and go, hey, at the end of the storm, I don't know exactly when this will end, but man, am I open to opportunities? Do I see possibility? And you can chart a new exciting course.
Yeah. So I think what we like to share with our pros here is something that they wouldn't know about you by looking you up online. What's a fun fact about yourself, maybe personally, and then also professionally about 1-800-GOT-JUNK that's not out there that you think our pros would either be surprised by, maybe some value, or something just unique?
That's great. Great question. Gee, something that they wouldn't know about me. It's a little bit out there, but it'd be hard. You'd have to Google a lot to find it. I used to suffer from debilitating panic attacks. Used to have some serious depression. I think a lot of these came from beating myself up, whether my father didn't like the direction I was going in the world. I didn't necessarily like the direction I was going, and comparing myself to others. When you see that every friend of yours is going to college and you just feel like you can't go to college, you don't have what it takes. And I would do well in some classes. I'd get A's in math, A's in science, and I'd get like what's below an F in English. I mean, it was just, I had a hard time. And so it beat me up a little bit. And I had some, again, depression and anxiety. But when you start to realize we all have gifts, what's that gift that you can use and be the best in the world at? I used to see ideas and big ideas and dreams in my head. I remember my grade 3 teacher, I think it was, said, "Oh, Brian, you're going to grow up and be an actor. You're always such a class clown. You're goofing off. You got all these big ideas." The one thing he was right on was the big ideas. I was able to dream and think big and then rally others to do the execution. So I come up with the idea. I don't know how to make the painted picture happen, but as long as I can recruit the right people, even the right franchise partners who go, "Hey, I want to build Shack Shine in Wichita. I don't know how to build it myself, but here's the systems and the documentation of the great people." Off they go and they build a massive operation in their own city.
Yeah, that's always encouraging to hear too. I was a perfect straight C student. And the reason why is because I'd aced the test and never do any of the projects, any of the homework. And I knew just enough what I needed to do to get that degrey. But in reality, I was running a business the entire time I was in college and wasn't paying attention whatsoever, but maybe a few classes. And I was an econ major. Economics of terrorism. I found that very interesting. Economics of ocean fisheries. But sometimes you just gravitate towards certain things, and those are kind of fun facts. I don't even think Alexa's even heard those things. But I think just sharing those things also with your employees, helps establish some level of humility, which also brings forward an easier way to give gratitude back, not just to your customers but also to your employees, and that helps recruit. And it's just interesting hearing you say these things, because I feel like in my head I'm like, oh yeah, yep, makes sense. And I feel a lot of our pros do all this just naturally without even thinking about it. And if not, now's a good time to start thinking about those things.
Yeah, I think many of us grew up trying to hide our weaknesses because we were told, you can't be weak. You focus on your strengths. And so I started taking ADD as one example and saying, hey, I have a hard time focusing, and I joke about it and stuff. And my team will be in a leadership team meeting and people will go, "Oh, it's 1:30. We've lost Brian," because I'm looking around and I'm making jokes and I'm just like not as focused. But somehow that humor brings it back and has me go, you know what? This team cares about me. I care about them. We're all good. Let's refocus and off we go. So why not be vulnerable? Why not open up and say, hey, I'm just a person. I'm just a guy. I'm scared during COVID. Like whatever's going on, own up to it. And I think people are a lot more empathetic to things in life if you share like that.
Yep.
Absolutely. So Brian, one more question for you. Then we're calling it's a lightning round, but we've rebranded, and it's a Lighten Greenberg round because that's our 2 last names combined. So
nice.
We're going to throw
Lighten Greenberg. Love it.
At you. But I was stalking you on Instagram, and I noticed your last post. It's a throwback picture, and I love when our pros post a throwback picture, whether it was your first truck, in your first office, the first job you did. If you were able to say one thing to that young guy sitting in his first office, what would you say to him?
Yeah, it's an easy one. Ooh. It's don't be afraid to fail. Just know that you're going to make so many mistakes, Brian. And guess what? Each one of them is not for naught. It's going to get you somewhere. You're going to learn from that. It's going to make you better. Just embrace it. And so in the same way that COVID is hard, I mean, I got 3 young kids. My wife runs a boutique. And here we are, we're scrambling, but so is everybody. And it's like, you know what? Just trust that we'll get through this storm. The other side, there's going to be opportunity and learning. There's lots of great things to be grateful for. So, Brian, trust you're going to fail a whole bunch. You might even write a book about it, but have some faith.
Do you think that Brian would know that you were going to be someone with a mohawk one day?
What I do, because it was actually always a goal of mine. I remember when I was about 14, back in the day, I had I still dress mostly in all black, but because I'm colorblind, but I used to wear black and ripped jeans, and I had eyeliner and dyed my hair jet black. I did all sorts of stuff. And one of my things to just kind of get at my parents when I was a rebel teenager was to come home one day with a mohawk. I never got around to it. So it was a goal. Check it off.
Check.
Most people don't get mohawks at 50, but
It was one of your painted pictures.
it was a vision I had. My wife wasn't happy with the vision. Yeah.
Well, I guess
Oh, boy.
my next ask of you is to post a throwback picture with the eyeliner and the crazy hair and the all black outfit.
Okay, done. I will do it. It's going to take me a little while, but I'll get there. I can't believe
Once
people
you find
like
it,
those
we'll
throwback
reshare
posts.
it.
That post
That
on my LinkedIn was like the biggest viewed post of all time for me. And I was just like, well, why did people like that? And they commented on things like, hey, you're drinking a big gulp and look at the dot matrix printer. And maybe it's just people are at home with during these times with too much to do.
Yeah, checking things out.
People are drawn to the behind the scenes. They're drawn to faces. And especially when you're invested in a person's business and their brand, seeing them in the old days, there's nothing better than that.
That's awesome.
Agreed. All right. So we're going to get into the Lighten Greenberg round. So first question, Brian, luck or hard work?
I'd say 50-50. Us getting on Oprah, we worked hard to make it happen. But if their producer hadn't read a story about us in the USA Today the day before we pitched, there's luck there too.
Mm-hmm. What is the best book you've ever read that you would recommend to our pros?
Ooh. Yeah, by far, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. He's 83 years old now, and we keep in touch quite a bit, and he's become a good friend. His book changed my life in terms of my business. So as someone who doesn't read, I was on a beach camping. I read this book because someone told me I had to, and someone I respected as a mentor. And I read it and I couldn't put it down. When I was done, I actually started it again. So I read it twice in one sitting because I'm just like, this is gold. Teaches you how to systematize your business and set it up for scalable success.
That's a good one. We had Ken Goodrich on, which wrote
Love Ken.
the HVAC one. And then Michael Gerber is going to be on the Home Service Super Summit, which will probably make some announcements, I don't know, in the next couple of weeks here, but it'll be in June. So Michael Gerber's going to keynote that one because you're right. That book is a must read. So listen to Brian, listen to us, go read it. It will definitely change your life.
It's awesome.
All right. If you had the opportunity, would you rather have more junk hauling businesses or more painting companies or franchisees?
So it's interesting. I will answer that with what do I think the market dictates. So while we're well over 300 million in revenue with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and it was the first baby in the family, so to speak, I do believe that the painting business is way, way larger than junk removal. And the fact that we can go in with Wow One Day Painting and disrupt that space where we've got a system to paint people's homes in a day. Why would you have someone come in and paint it in 2 weeks at the same price, same quality, when you can have it done in a day by a flash mob of awesome painters? And so the Wow One Day opportunity, I think, is just by nature going to be a bigger space. I mean, everybody right now who's watching this on Zoom is in a room that has walls that chances are they'll one day need painting, but I bet they're not necessarily sitting there with a big pile of junk next to them. So
I feel like can't see walls because we got fake green screen walls. But that is really interesting. You said that just because we did exterior painting because interior painting, it can get kind of dangerous and liable. You're messing around inside the home, but outside the home, I'm even trying to think like, how would I paint it in a day? Now my mind is just spinning. Like if I try to do that, because I remember a crew of 4, like, if we did it in 4 days, that was good. So just one day, that is cool disruption. That's true innovation to get that down to that one day.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not that hard, to be honest. You as someone who's painted, Roland, you understand that one person can paint one room in a day. Great. You've got 5 rooms, you put 5 people in, or maybe the living room's a little bit bigger, you put 2 people in there. I had 16 people come in and paint my home, all 3 floors, got it done in a day. and was so in love with the concept that I bought the company.
Wow.
See, that's cool.
See,
so
exactly.
opportunity and everything.
I was like, that's
Alexa just said, wow, right? Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I walked through, and the company was called One Day Painting. And at 6:30 p.m. when I came home, floor to ceiling moldings trim, I was like, wow. And so that became the name, Wow One Day Painting. And it absolutely blew my mind. I didn't even think they could do it, yet they did it. And the quality was perfect.
That is
Yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot.
Too. I feel like we've learned a bunch of fun facts that aren't on the internet. Like, I'm pretty sure the eyeliner thing is nowhere on the internet.
It's somewhere. It ended up on my Facebook a long time ago because of someone I graduated with who thought it would be fun to post it. So if you look real hard, it's there.
You can find it.
Well, you're going to be posting on Insta. I'll see it there. So, Brian, we have some really great questions from our audience. So we'll spend the remainder of our time with you asking the top voted ones. We're going to start with Michelle. How do you deal with hiring in an industry with traditionally so much turnover? Any nuggets around hiring?
Yeah. So my tip there is, first of all, we hire our system is called beer and barbecue. When I had those 11 people that I got rid of, my new system became, would I want to have a beer with this person? Do I like them? Do I find them interested? Do they see what I see in terms of possibility with the business? And then it was the barbecue side is, how would they fit at a company picnic or company barbecue? Do they fit in with the team? They don't have to be just like us, but do they fit? And so hire based on a beer and barbecue type fit and make sure you're happy with these people. But more importantly, say, find out what motivates them. When we bring on franchise owners or when we bring on employees, we want to find out what are their life goals and dreams and how can the business help achieve that? And so if you can get people's hearts and tap into how could this business help serve their life? And if they can see that top 30 metros in North America, that winning vision, and they want to be a part of it, great. When I painted that picture, I had about half the company at the time say, Brian, you're smoking some hope dope. This is not happening. Hope dope. And then I had, the other half that said, wow, this is exciting. And people would say, how are you going to do it? And I said, I don't know, but do you want to be a part? And they said, hell yeah.
That's a great way to find good people, because people that are willing to go on that ride are going to be very forgiving and really understand and embrace the willingness to fail, because they don't mind that ride. That's what they're signing up for.
Absolutely.
So let's see here. Robert Clohan, how difficult is it to franchise a business in various states? And at what point do you recommend a business to consider franchising? How did you think about it?
Yeah. So what inspired me to franchise was Michael Gerber's book. So he talks about how to build your business up like a franchise, with all the systems and processes. He talks about how franchises are more successful than non-franchise businesses because of the systems, because they can be scalable and you can work yourself out of a job so that you can have all these people build and grow with you. And when I read the book, I said, wow, I wonder if franchising is my model. So I started to systematize everything from how do you price jobs? What do you say to the customer when you're on site? How do you answer the phone in the call center? How do we market? All these things. And I listed out all my processes and said, these are best practices. And everything started to look, feel, and act so much like a franchise that I chose that path. Now, in a way, you build a prospectus, you've got to register with the Federal Trade Commission, you've got to register with a whole bunch of different states, your legal franchise disclosure documents. It's not inexpensive. I don't think I realized when I started the process how expensive it would be, but I did it. I made some mistakes and I learned. Once you're done all the paperwork, you can start bringing on franchise partners. But what most franchisors that I've known have done wrong is they don't pay attention to people. So Michelle had asked, how do you find all these great people in these industries? If you find the wrong franchise partners, they'll sue you, they'll go bankrupt, all sorts of bad things will happen. And you lose your reputation. And when you fail as a franchisor, it's a much bigger failure that I don't recommend people make versus failing as just a one-off owner operator. So how easy? I don't think it's easy. Our businesses all deal with challenges and failures, and we're getting through it and we learn and grow. But I clearly love it. And the reason I love it is it's taking people who have always wanted to start their own business, but might have not known where to start. We give them a platform, we give them the systems, we have the call center, the booking and dispatch, and they can grow from there. So I love seeing others be successful, and that's what drives me.
Yeah, I feel like doing some angel investing myself just on the side. It's less even about just the ideas. It's about just helping other entrepreneurs and just seeing all these mini businesses and just trying to help them because you can. I mean, there's leverage within that. But that's just super fun, and I encourage pros, if you feel like you're ready for it, it's a leap, and you're gonna make some mistakes there, but go check out that book. I'm gonna keep giving you guys hints on that one. It's a good one.
The last quick thing I'll say on it is I would say, so someone gave me the advice who was in the franchise business. They were in McDonald's and all sorts of other mentors I spoke with. They said, you're not ready to franchise, Brian. And I had a bunch of work to do, and it took me about 10 years to get to the point where I was ready. Even then, I still had work to do. But I tell people when they reach out to me and want to franchise their business, I think if you haven't built out all the processes and systems over at least 5 years time, you just don't know what you're doing. And people want to buy proof. They want to know that you've figured out all the mistakes so they don't have to. And you're not going to have it all figured out, but I think 5 years worth.
Scalable, repeatable.
You got it.
Scalable and repeatable. This is a question from Scott. Eric Church and Roy Williams, how do you get all these celebrities to hang out with you? Since you're a brand guy, can you talk about what brand pillars are for your 1-800-GOT-JUNK businesses? Great question.
Yeah, so really, our pillars are, it's about people, first and foremost. It's about customer, and it's about our partners. So when we look at people, first and foremost, it's all about people. 1994, when I fired them all, I was like, hey, I'm going to get every person from here on out right. I made mistakes still, but very few of them. And it was all about picking the right people. So even Eric Church, for example, not the country musician, but Eric Church, our president and COO, I was really, really careful because of some failures in previous hires before I brought Eric on board. And that courtship was, months and months, flying back and forth between Vancouver and Toronto to our two cities, getting to know each other and having some beers and some dinner, and seeing how each other worked before, he was leaving his previous job to take a risk and be with us. And it's been 8 years, and hopefully it's forever. Our company has quadrupled under his leadership. And so when you pick the right people, to me, it's the entrepreneur is the visionary. They're the ones that get to go, hey, here's the culture. Here's what the business and the brands look and feel like. How do you build out that people pillar? You find the right people who are going to get out there and execute on your vision. So I know there's lots of questions in there, and I'm probably getting a little ADD on the answer. Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads, he's created our ad creative, and the Just Point and Junk Disappears, and he's a genius. And when we hired him, I remember Roy actually said, the deal is, if I write your radio ads after I get to know you and know what your brand promises are, you can't change a word. And so, true story, I called Roy Williams up. There was one word, I don't even remember what the word was, but it actually didn't fit, and it wasn't really, something was weird about it. And I said, I know you said we can't change one, but I think we should change this one. I'm sure you weren't serious. He goes, no, if you change that word, you're going to want to change more. He said, I chose that word specifically for such and such a reason. And he had his whole deal. And I said, okay, you know what? I trust you. If you think it's the right word, we'll keep it in.
Yeah. And, what was the word?
And I don't remember. I wish I do, because I told that story, but I don't remember. But if you interviewed Roy Williams, he would tell you that I called him on it and said, I need to change this one word. And he goes, no, I don't think we're going to be working together anymore. And I said, okay, we can keep it.
Don't leave me, Roy.
Well, you got to trust someone's magic and their secret sauce. He had 30 years of experience in radio. Nobody's bought more radio ads than Roy Williams. He knows what he's talking about, and I trust him. And he's right. Makes amazing ads for us.
Yeah. All right. Another question here. How has the O2E brand implemented virtual estimates for the different industries? What method works best?
Yeah. So full disclosure, it's new to us. We're implementing right now. So you have Wow One Day Painting. We've got, I think, a YouTube video out on it right now, but somebody calls us and wants an estimate, and it's booked through the online engine, we'll give them a virtual estimate. So we'll Zoom with them, we'll FaceTime, Google Hangout, whatever their preference is, and we'll get them to walk through the house, and we'll
their phone around,
talk them through it. Exactly. And you know what? It's amazing. I think we're all learning in this virtual world how much of a sense you can get for what you're seeing behind the person. I mean, you get a sense of who someone is and their space and what's important to them. And I think so much of a virtual estimate is more the relationship. Who are you investing in Wow One Day Painting, much more than, what's the exact cost and are you getting the estimate perfect? It's more of a ballpark, and we're experienced enough as any one of your pros would be who's in the painting space to go, hey, you walk me through your home, I'm going to give you a rough idea. And I don't think people expect you to be held to anything else.
I feel like now more than ever, everyone, like when Zoom became a word, similar to how Google became, hey, I got to Google something. People know it means search, but Zoom now, people know it. People have it. Don't be afraid to ask. Like, hey, let's hop on a Zoom. Almost drop it as if it's a given, because guaranteed, I bet you they have it. They've done it with somebody. So don't be afraid. And by the way, homeowners love technology forward companies. We see that all the time because they know that if you're innovating, you're going to stay alive. You're a good company. You're not just the fly-by-night kind of company that they might come to expect in the home services side. So drop that knowledge. Don't be afraid. Just throw it out there and see how the customer reacts. In the very worst case, if they don't know what the word Zoom says, just like, oh, video chat. Then okay, great. And then you can teach them something new. People love to learn these things.
Well, it's funny. I think with Zoom, 3 or 4 months ago, people were still scared of letting you into their private space, but people somehow are realizing that you have to now, and they're getting more comfortable with it. So even a quick short story, but I was doing one of our first in the news sections in our huddle meeting, and there I was presenting sort of what was going on in the world from my perspective to everybody in the company on Zoom. And I had a technology issue. I had my wife was sick. I had my son had an issue, and I was scrambled, and I was wearing pajamas, and I come up and my tripod's all set up and I'm ready to go, and I'm standing far away and I'm talking, and I said, okay, everybody, full disclosure, I'm in pajamas. I'm sorry, but it's been that kind of morning. And so people laughed, and then we actually made the next Friday pajama day, and everybody showed up at Zoom in pajamas. So who cares, right? Be willing to fail, make a mistake, be yourself, and it's kind of fun how it all works out.
Authenticity always wins. People love it.
Sure. For sure.
All right.
Okay, so I know we were going to end the Q&A, but there is actually one more really good question that came in last minute from Mike Toran. Is it all junk? What do you do with the treasures? What's the craziest thing you've ever hauled away?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, so 61.3% was our national audited number, gets recycled, donated, reused, and so on. So we try and keep things out of the landfill. We care about the environment and all that sort of stuff. It's not a big marketing thing for us, but we try. And so when you think of some of the fun things that we found, Clark Gable's old piano, we had John Wayne's old Bible. Someone found a 5-carat diamond ring, which of course they returned to the homeowner. And this woman's husband had passed away years ago, and she lost the ring, and there it was. And she was just so touched. We had a bomb, a diffused bomb from World War II that was found in someone's basement that they had to call the hazmat team for. What else? Oh, I think my favorite, $400,000 in cash we found in someone's house. So a house where they were renovating, the floorboards, one of our TOMs, we call them, our truck team members, could see some of the, what looked like a bill between a couple of the floorboards. And he called the customer over and said, does that look like money? And the customer's like, hell yeah. So they jacked up crowbarred the floor, and they started seeing that there were bills everywhere. They ended up ripping up the entire floor, $400,000, 1932 circa bills. This was in Canada.
Oh.
And they figured the calculation, it got a big news coverage, was $5.3 million in today's money. And so what was fun is the customer got, a reno that was $400,000 cheaper. And they gave our TOMs a big tip and got some news press coverage out of it. And it was a fun one.
I don't even know what I would do if I found that kind of money and the floorboards just there, free reno.
That's amazing.
That's great. That's crazy.
What fun stories.
Wow. That was a great question. Thank you for asking that one. All right. So Brian, one thing we love to do is ask our guests, who is someone that, just like yourself, just imparted a bunch of knowledge to our pros, someone that you think can inspire them, someone that can drop tips and tricks and any kind of knowledge to help them move forward kind of during these times. Who is someone within your network that you think now after doing this interview with us would be willing to come on? You can introduce us and we'd interview them and all our pros can listen.
That's a great question. Who would be someone you could learn from? I mean, man, I know so many, you know, a lot of my podcast buddies that have done some great work. Guy Raz, How I Built This, Jordan Harbinger would be amazing. He does an amazing podcast. I got a friend, Jesse Cole, who owns the Savannah Bananas. He's the guy in the yellow tux. He owns 7 tuxedos. He's amazing at what he's done with marketing, guerrilla marketing. Yeah, I mean, I'll find you someone.
Awesome.
Happy to go out and see what I can dig up and see what will help you out.
I think our pros would love all those marketing ones that you just mentioned. And also, I know they listen to a lot of podcasts because they're always out on the road and the trucks driving around, and there's nothing better to do while you're doing that than to learn and educate yourself. So How I Built This, great podcast. Mm-hmm. All right, Alexa, do you want to ask your last question? And then we're going to get into the book details.
Promise, Brian, this is our last one. Oh, hold on.
It's all good.
Sirens going off. They're after me. Okay, we're good.
Where are you guys broadcasting from, by the way? I know you're all in different homes and
San Diego here. Yeah, so okay. Pacific Beach in San Diego.
And awesome. I am downtown, right by Petco Park. So
cool. Just curious.
Craziness.
Awesome.
So, Brian.
Yes.
Every podcast or every guest that we have on, we ask them, what is one thing our listeners should do tomorrow that will help them move the needle in their life or their business?
Yeah, so I sort of highlighted it a little bit earlier, but I'd say take out a sheet of paper tomorrow morning and write down the very top, you know, WTF. What am I getting right now out of this failure? What's the gift? Just bullet point out as many things as you can with it, at least one. What am I learning? What's going to happen out of this COVID tough time that's going to make me a better leader, a better pro, a better business person, a better, parent, whatever it is, something that's going to make you better. What is that? Just have that vision for something. And most people that do this exercise, they start going, okay, WTF, this is a failure. What's one good thing that's going to come from this? They start listing like a page, and then they start getting excited. And so I get when you're in a tough time, it's hard to have that mindset, but just do it tomorrow. You know, send me your list, go onto some of my social media, and I'd love to see it and just see what kind of opportunity you see that I haven't yet seen.
That's awesome.
All right. So on that note, we want to see those. We're going to post here. You got to text willing to fail to 31996. Send that list. So send it in. We have got a comment section, because we guessed you would say that, that has an area where they can put that. So document it, write it on some piece of paper first, and just put some of that into there. What we're going to do is the top 20 that come in there, we are going to ship you over the book, Willing to Fail, so you can go into more detail there. And then what we'll do too is we'll compile it and then shoot it over to Brian too, so Brian can check it out.
That's awesome.
But you guys are watching, do that, submit it. Promise you, Brian will get to see it, and we're going to ship you that book.
Super cool.
Brian, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this wisdom with our pros. We really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be reaching out for some of those introductions and keep the ball rolling and keep our pros learning.
Yeah, thank you, Roland, Alexa, Mel. A lot of fun being here tonight, and you guys run a first-class operation. So thanks for having me on the program.
Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you, Brian.
You guys. Okay.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.